This arc is seriously ramping up. Pretty much as soon as it started, we seem to be getting straight down to all of the businesses. Devil Fruit revelations, a Cypher Pole attack, a potential new Straw Hat, and a 900-year-old future robot from the past, as well as a modern robot from the modern. Ever since the end of Wano, Oda has not taken his foot off that narrative accelerator. So strap your you in, because we have got a lot to cover. So we essentially have a lot of Vegapunk lore dumping happening here, which is exactly what we, or at least I, wanted. And the big thing here is the unexpected revelation of Vegapunk's Devil Fruit. The brain fruit, which does admittedly sound much funnier in Japanese. It's a tongue twister, the nomi nomi no mi, which is why Vegapunk gets caught in his massive tongue. And I just want to point out that Oda has almost certainly just been patiently sitting on this pun for over 2 decades now. Conceptually, I actually like this fruit quite a lot because it comes with a sense of balance. Because sure, this gives your mind brain the capacity for infinite knowledges, but it is somewhat finite because each new fact leaves you a slightly bigger noggin to carry around wherever you so happen to go, and thus it gives you a literal burden of knowledge. It's like something out of a Stephen King book. If this were not a wacky pirate comic, then you could take this into some very sort of directions in the ironic horror genre. Probably my favorite part of this chapter was our weekly dose of Luffy logic, with the idea that since Vegapunk doesn't have his brain on anymore, he might be just as or even potentially stupider than your average monkey type pirate. And honestly, that is a thought I had with the last chapter, because Junkyard Vegapunk is just much more aloof than Flashback Vegapunk, and perhaps the slicing offing of one of the body's most vital organs might have had something to do with that. I'm also very intrigued by the idea that the 6 Punksum clones each connect to Punk Records once a day to take in all of the juicy knowledges. And I guess that's what very much keeps them all on the same page, which is why I wonder what would happen if they were suddenly cut off from Punk Records entirely. Which may happen because bad things are almost certainly going to happen, if not happening, present tense. But if everyone gets cut off from the system, then I imagine that they would actually go on to become fully realized individuals. Punk Records right now is their great equalizer, but without that, they're not sharing their knowledge or potentially even their needs. And so they would each have to tackle life much more individually. We also have something of a maybe dream to fulfill here. Vegapunk is very keen on this insanely utopian idea of giving every living person access to Punk Records, and Jinbei, quite rightly in my opinion, points out that that's probably just gonna be a bad idea. To which Vegapunk essentially says, yeah, but science, my friend, science. Again, I do need to remember that this is One Piece, and an idea like this could work as the endpoint of the series, but all I really know is that this would never work in reality, unless we wanted to speed run our way to global destruction. What's even more concerning is that Vegapunk wants the whole world to contribute to it as well, like some sort of fictional pirate Wikipedia. But that sort of thing would surely require some insane moderation. Otherwise, science turns into, whatever the opposite of science is. It turns into lies and probably mostly memes. But then again, there's definitely an issue with monopolizing information as well, and that might be part of what caused the whole war situation with the Great Kingdom. After about a gazillion years, we also know for a fact why Momonosuke's Devil Fruit was labeled as defective, and it's exactly the answer I wanted and have put forward on this channel on several occasions. But keeping in mind that Oda is, he's Oda, I can definitely see a situation where we meet Vegapunk and he's just like, oh yeah, it wasn't perfect because it was pink. No, I don't like pink. It functions identically, but just think of the aesthetic qualities. It's just so One Piece. And I love how harshly Vegapunk takes this failure. This dude has, for all intents and purposes, perfectly replicated a Devil Fruit and just decided, throw it in the bin because it's pink. Pink. Don't like pink. Should have been blue. I like blue. And at this point, I legitimately wonder if Vegapunk considers any of his inventions successful, because he refers to a couple of failures in this chapter, and I could see a comedically twisted world where Vegapunk has never once been satisfied with anything he's done and considers himself the height of failure, and all of them for very comical and mostly irrelevant reasons. The other example in the chapter is of course the beam saber. It serves its distinctly unique and not at all reference to something else purpose very, very well, but it also summons insects, which was a fun bit of comedy in the chapter, but I do wonder if this is setting something up in a narratively stealthy way. If there was a situation where, some insects would be mighty useful right now, and then someone like Usopp switches on the beam saber and pretends he's going to fight Lucci, but instead he's just summoning an army of bugs as a distraction. Or maybe Stussy or Kaku have similar fears of insects like Bonnie does. I don't know, I'm probably just reading into that too much. That's the problem with a series when the author is beyond masterful with setup. You start looking into fact, every small thing is a potential setup for something else. But now, how about Vegapunk for Straw Hat? This got sprung on us very suddenly, but our Dr. Man has requested passage away from Egghead Island, which I imagine wouldn't just involve him, but also the other 6 punklets. And I'm actually quite excited by that potential, because I think it would create some really fun crew dynamics. Like say Sanji cooking 24/7 for York because she needs food and Sanji needs to simp, or even stuff like a trigger-happy Atlas starting a fight with Zoro. I imagine that the Seraphim would need to be abandoned, because otherwise I think the Straw Hats just automatically become the most powerful pirate crew in the world. So, we've got to leave something for the world government to actually be threatening with. After which point, though, we have a couple of options going forward. I imagine it could be in Vegapunk's best interest to reunite with the Revolutionary Army, because that's where bestest buddy Dragon is, but also Kuma. And maybe Vegapunk could do him a bit of a fix. Not to mention that Bonnie thread that we need to wrap up. The problem with that is that Momoiro Island isn't in the New World. It's all the way back in the first half of the Grand Line, and we don't go back. We need to push forwards. Only forwards. The revolutionaries would need to come to us. And so I still think Elbaf is looking like a good solution, especially if we get forcibly cut off from Punk Records, because all of the wonderful books should be with the Giants, and Vegapunk does seem to have some clout with the island. I don't know though. I have this awful feeling that the original Vegapunk may end up dying and we'll take on board the 6 Vega clones, sort of like seeing their flashback take place in real time. Inherited will and all of that. Speaking of though, I love Lucci, Kaku, and Stussy, but I still find it very difficult to see them as a threatening force. At least not in the same way that I saw, say, Jack during Zoro. Especially not in the masks. Kaku looks like some sort of Cthulhu creature. Meanwhile, Stussy just looks like she's on her way to a furry convention. Hatori legitimately looks so much more serious business than either of them. The thing to remember about CP0 though, is that yeah, they're outgunned by the Straw Hats, the Vegapunk, and all of the Seraphim. I really don't care how much progress Lucci and Kaku have made post-time skip. They are now fighting against a god, a king of hell, and still Sanji, so they do not win head on. But then again, that's not really how assassins best operate. Right now, they're knocking on the front door, sure, but the skills of Cypher Pol are best applied in the shadows. They can outthink and out-strategize the Straw Hats. And very importantly, they don't need to actually beat the crew to complete their mission. They just need to kill some Vegapunks. In fact, I dare say that every time Cypher Pol has decided to take a head-on confrontation, it's led to grand devastation. So they should really stick to what they do best, which is sneaky mask-wearing shenaniganry. Assuming they did go with the straightforward way, I guess CP0 are on track to hit Zoro and Brook, which would be fantastic because Zoro and Kaku could have some banter. Zoro being all like, so you decided not to get a job at the zoo after all. The poor life choices. Or something like that. I don't know, I'm not a sassy swordsman. All I know is that Brook would probably ask to see Stussy's panties. But what I took away from the end of Any Slubby is that Kaku did develop a begrudging respect for Zoro after their fight, so I would be very interested to see how he reacts more so than Zoro's side. Oh, and I just realized we completely skipped over the phenomenal ancient robot attack. That panel of it above Marijois, very Attack on Titan. But this here bad boy 200 years ago all of a sudden decided to scale the red line for, checks notes, reasons, but I don't think it came to life out of nowhere, as if it were programmed by the ancient kingdom to activate in 700 years. That seems weirdly specific. Feels more likely that someone else stumbled upon it, and then either accidentally or even intentionally woke it up. After which point, Robot did what Robot does, which is whatever Robot is told to do, which in this case was go to Marijois. Robin then mentions that 200 years ago also happened to be the time when Fishman rights came into effect, to which everyone promptly ignores her, because it's a completely out of nowhere thing to say. I mean, for example, 200 years ago was also the year that the St. Brice set sail, which is the ship that the Straw Hats encountered falling from the sky at the beginning of the gyro arc. Basically though, this is much less Robin speaking and more Oda speaking to us here. He's saying, remember this thing because they might be connected. Fun fact though, what Robin didn't say is that 200 years ago was the first time the Ryugu Kingdom participated in the Reverie. The first of this many times. So roughly once a century. Perhaps our robo-friend even attacked Marijois during the Reverie, either terrifying the Fishman royalty at the time and prompting them to decide, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that again, or even causing the other kingdoms to think that the Ryugu Kingdom was responsible for the attack. Actually, you know what? I don't really like using the word attack, because the robot didn't actually cause any harm, presumably because it ran out of power, but also perhaps because harm wasn't necessarily what it was programmed to do. It could have been on a retrieval mission, for example, perhaps to take back a certain giant straw hat or any other relevant relics. In any case, what are the odds that Frankie finds a way to power it? It's not on the Frankie bingo card, but this mysterious power source is, well, it's far too good to ignore. Or maybe it's something even weirder. Like maybe it's a Haki robot powered by Haki. Except that no Haki user was stupid enough to try it, except for that one guy 200 years ago. Like, it's pretty ridiculous, and as it's coming out of my mouth, I kind of hope it doesn't happen. But I could imagine a situation where Luffy tries to use his word commands, but just gets a little bit too assertive, leaks some Haki, and it actually comes to life. The really cool thing though is that what happened 200 years ago with the robot kind of parallels what's happening in this very chapter with Kuma. He's activated out of nowhere and running to an unknown destination to enact an unknown act. It was kind of weird to see Kuma with all of his insides now being his outsides, because Lindbergh was tinkering with him in the hopes of, well, I don't actually know. This whole situation feels pretty hopeless. Then again, maybe that's why Dragon was speaking with Vegapunk, using him as some sort of glorified tech support to try and help out this Kuma situation. Very notably, Dragon and Ivankov still seem to treat Kuma like he's a living person. So they've definitely not lost hope that he's still in there. And I think that's saying something. That's saying the big something. Especially with Dragon, who is one of the more cynical realists in the world. If even he thinks there's hope, then I guess I should think there's hope. And also you. The way the scenes are juxtaposed seem to imply that Shaka's order to prepare for fight battling immediately triggered Kuma, as if he's part of the Vegapunk system, which I suppose he could be as a pacifista maybe. And theoretically, Kuma could reach Egghead Island. If he still has his devil fruit, it is definitely possible, although it still probably wouldn't be instantaneous. Luffy, for example, needed 3 days to fly from Sapodi to Amazon Lily. But we are racing towards a potential Egghead conclusion far quicker than I thought we would. Many elements are coming together, and now we have a great sense of urgency. And while I definitely don't think we'll be off the island by the end of the year because there's only 3 chapters left, I do think that early 2023 is going to see the start of our next new journey. But right now, here's another video because you like videos and I like giving you videos. It's the perfect little thing we have going.